and that we are here for ongoing support. It is so critical that people understand the reason why we are here, the reason why we do this, the reason why we're excited that all of you are here today. And so once again, Nafisa, thank you for the time. And then I'll kick it back to you.
Before Anthony gets started, can we just get some engagement in the room here? How many of you have attended the Success Starts Here Men's Seminar, either in the past or on September the 9th? There's a multi-choice that pops up on the screen. And if you could just check yes or no. Again, we'd like to keep your engagement going. And then Anthony, I'll let you take things from here.
Perfect.
Looks like we're getting a good majority of individuals that haven't attended, but we do have some that have.
Yeah, the numbers are still rolling in. So it looks like about 83% of you guys have not previously attended. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for taking some time out of your day, not only to better yourselves, but to learn a little bit more about some of the community partners that exist in your communities and how we're all teaming up together to improve the lives of everybody living within them. So hats off to you. This is really the first step to improving in not only your career search, but your life search. So with that, I will introduce myself a little bit and give you a little background to who I am, my organization. So I represent Goodwill Industries of Southeastern Wisconsin, and we essentially are a large social enterprise. A lot of people look at Goodwill and they immediately think, oh, retail stores, which is totally understandable. However, we have about 5 different individual business units that all generate revenue for the greater Goodwill mission, which, if you're not familiar with, is to put people to work. We believe in the power of a hand up and not a hand out. And we do that every day through different training programs, different business units. And then I specifically work for Goodwill Talent Bridge. So we are the division that's our purpose is to partner with outside organizations to fill staffing gaps for them. And last year we put about 5,000 people to work. So you can kind of see the breadth of what we do in Wisconsin and Milwaukee. And with that, I would like to get started with the presentation. So to start every presentation, I typically like to kick it off with a little bit of reflection, as it is quite important to do on a daily basis. And to do that, I'm going to use Steve Jobs. So your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And I believe this quote is so powerful because you can find greatness in anything that you do. Whether you're at an entry-level position, the work you do has an impact on not only yourself, but the community, the people around you, as well as build self-esteem, confidence, everything you need to continue to take steps and progress forward in your life. I think we actually have a poll question on this one. So the poll question, as you can see, is how many of you can relate to this statement? I totally understand that work is something that we all have to do, but being able to take pride in it is an entirely different thing. We're getting a lot of yeses. I really appreciate that, guys. It's really good to hear that people are taking pride in what they do, because once you believe that the work you do is great work, it really just gets the ball rolling. No no's. Wow. Hats off to you guys. So we're going to quickly go through some of the workshop objectives that we have for today. So first, we're going to define what a resume is and its purpose. We're going to review what employers look for in a resume. We're going to explore 2 different types of resumes, and we're going to identify appropriate employment references. This is a big one for everybody. We're going to discuss what a purpose of a cover letter is, when you need it, what it is, what it does. We're going to generate some ideas that you can incorporate into your current resume or a rough draft of a resume. And of course, at the end of this, if you have any additional questions about anything resume, you can connect with the Goodwill Workforce Connection Centers, which are a free tool that we have that offer basically a buttload of knowledge in the whole mock interviews, resumes, everything you need to kind of get your career going. So quick question, guys. We're gonna kick it off with a little bit of knowledge. Feel free to answer either in the chat or in person, in voice, whichever way you are most comfortable. How quickly do you think applications are received after you apply? Again, feel free to just reach out in the chat or in person. 30 seconds. Received by the employer. My apologies. So if you didn't know, applications are received about 200 seconds after a job is posted. So that's just a couple of minutes. And within that couple of minutes to a 24-hour time period, about 75 to 200 resumes are received for each job, depending on the position. So what does that mean for you? That means if you're not getting your resume down pat, there's a likelihood that you'll get just tossed to the wayside. So that's why it's more important that you're attending these types of things and continuing to progress. Like I said, one spelling or grammar mistake could have your resume thrown out. And trust me when I say this, I speak from experience. This has happened to me in my life, my own personal career path. I've done this and I've had to have a talking to. So please double check, triple check, have somebody proofread it for you. Use all the spell checks you can just to make sure this is on point. And next, we're going to go with a little bit of a poll question here. How many unfilled jobs do you think there are currently in the United States of America? Again, feel free to answer in the poll. We're getting a lot of different varying answers. So for the person who answered 7.6 million unfilled jobs, you would be 100% correct. So currently there are that 7.6 million unfilled jobs, which has stayed relatively stable to prior to COVID. Prior to COVID, there was about 7.6, 7.7. So that is remaining the same. If you care to guess in the chat or in person, how many unemployed workers do you think there are in the current United States of America? I'll give you a hint. It's a little bit higher than the current unfilled jobs. See 20 million, 10 million in the chat. So you guys are right there, right in the ballpark. There's currently 13.6 million unemployed workers. So what that means for you is that there's nearly 2 people to every 1 job that we need right now. So taking the time to really bolster up your resume and understand what makes you credible and what discounts you from different positions is very, very important. So hats off to you again for taking the time to do this today. So what is a resume exactly? I know there's a lot of things that a resume is and a resume isn't. So I'm very interested to hear what you guys think a resume is. What is it to an employer and what is it to you? I know this one's a little bit of a more loaded question. Not seeing anything in the chat, so I'll move on. Story of your life, communication of skills, contribution to businesses. Looks like I spoke a little too soon. You guys are 100% spot on. So a resume is a first impression for employers. Just like in real life situations, face-to-face situations, people tend to make that first assessment pretty quickly. So the first impression of your resume has to be spot on. It relates the job seeker's experience to the job interests, the different skills required, and most importantly, it does not take place on an application. However, with that being said, it can often be asked to be added to an application. So bear that in mind. Now, this is another little engagement piece. What is the difference between a resume and an application? Again, feel free to answer in the chat. If you want to answer in voice, certainly would love to hear from you guys. See, one is official and the other isn't. That is certainly true. Application is driven by the business and the questions they want to answer. Very, very true. So we'll get into it a little bit more. One is more in depth and is more of the general look. Very, very true. All right, so we'll get into it. So a resume is a summary of skills and experience. So this is where you'll have all of your different job skills, your achievements, everything that you've done to get to where you are in your current career. And an application is an official document. And when I say it's an official document, it is something that not only puts you in the system for the employer as someone who has applied for a position, but it is also an oath that can be used in a court of law. That's why it's so important that you answer truthfully to everything that they have on it. And it does require exact past employment dates for background checks. And this is also something that is of high caliber, because if you don't have the correct background checks and the correct information in your application, you can immediately be discredited for a position. All right, so we have a poll here. How long do you think a employer looks at a resume? So a recruiter, anybody, how long do you think they first glance at it? A poll should have popped up on your screen. I know this one's a little bit of a tricky question. Again, some answers in, some 1 to 2 seconds, a minute. Perfect. So the correct answer actually is 5 to 7 seconds, guys. 5 to 7 seconds is how long a recruiter or employer glances at your resume. So what does that mean? They're looking for the general outline, they're looking for the specific jobs, and they're looking for keywords that fit this position. So this 5 to 7 seconds is crucial for you. And the most important part about this 5 to 7 seconds is it gets you in the door, and then you have all the time in the world to talk to your skills, your abilities, your achievements, everything that you've done to set you apart from the crowd. And just so you know, approximately 80% of job openings are never advertised. Especially in this current job climate, it is crucial that you take the time to do research, to think, who do I want to work for? What organization could I be proud to be a part of? And then you need to do a step beyond and go onto their websites, reach out to their hiring managers if it's something that you are very interested in. Because a lot of the times, like it said here, 80% of job openings aren't advertised. So it really falls upon you to take the next step and to continue the charge. So the purpose of a resume, like I just stated, it's the ticket to the interview, which is the most important part. We all know that once we get in there, we can let our personality shine through and we can just wow the recruiters and employers and start our new career path. So the resume shows your specific job experiences, your work-related skills, transferable skills, and the most important one that is not listed on here is your achievements. Achievements. Being able to speak to what you did within your job duties and extra outside of that really sets you up and above others in the employment process. Being able to say, I worked as a picker packer and I was in the green every day for 6 months is an achievement that really reflects upon your ability to do what you say you're going to do. So think about any achievements you may have achieved, big or small, in your specific work experience, and really be sure to highlight those. Which takes us into types of resumes. So there's the reverse chronological resume. This is pretty much the most common resume, the pretty much standard format that we see a lot of the times. And then there's a combination resume. So we're going to break down these two a little bit more. So the reverse chronological is typically most preferred by employers, as it is kind of clearly outlined. The dates are all there, and it is pretty much standard format. So it focuses on your work experience and your job duties. And the reason it's reverse chronological, not chronological, is because you list your most recent experience first, and then you build backwards on all your job experience. It's typical to see people go back about 10 years of relevant experience. So if you're a little bit older in the workforce and you have worked more careers, just be cognizant of that. You don't want to take it too far. And here we're going to look at a little example. So Michael Tierney. So he starts off, he has a nice bold name. He has all of his information highlighted up here at the top, and he goes into a little skill summary. So you can either have a skill summary or a career summary on a reverse chronological order. resume, it is more common to see a skills summary rather than a work summary. So just bear that in mind. You can interchange them, but the skill summary seems to be more popular. And then we go right back into our career experience. You can see he clearly outlines his dates here, September 2018 to present. And this is my favorite part about this resume. He initially starts with an achievement. He says, revamped failing stores to proper corporate standards, increasing profits by 3% annually. That was not his job to do that, but he took the initiative and kind of just charged forward and was able to make that happen, which then indicates to recruiters, hiring managers, this is a person of character. This is a person who takes pride in what they do. He then goes on to list everything that he actually did in his job. So I won't talk through every single one of these as you guys can see them, but you can just see how powerful that first initial statement is. It really is an eye catcher, and I encourage you to really take some time to think about those. Next, we'll get into combination resumes. So a combination resume uses both your work history and your skills, and we don't see these as often, but they are very powerful for people who are taking big changes in their career, or they are re-entering the work fields in general. Because when you re-enter, there's typically a gap in your employment, and that is easily identified with a combination resume. In addition, it just kind of validates everything you have done in your work history and your job duties, and you add dates at the bottom rather than in one specific part on the side of your resume where you list your current job. So we'll look at an example of that so you can better understand what I'm saying. So Sarah here, see, Sarah started with a career summary, as is common for people who have chosen to use a combination resume. And hers, unfortunately, doesn't have any achievements going on here, but is still a pretty strong resume. She still uses quality action words, action verbs, keywords, and it really is pretty decent all around. So you can see she goes through a career summary, and then it just goes into work experience. The work experience isn't spaced out similar to the reverse chronological. Instead, she puts her most recent position, similar to the reverse chronological, and then just puts her job duties within it. So she puts her job duties, lists all of them, and then just goes on to the next position. So you can see here, she worked as a bank teller, and then she had all of her different experiences, and then she worked as a mortgage loan processor, and she was managing a team of 5 processors and doing a couple other things. And then when you get down to the bottom here, this is where your employment history is. So your employment history should, again, be in reverse chronological, which you can see she did here. She started May 2016 to September 2018 at the Bank of Anywhere, and then at EdgeBank, she worked from July 13th to November 2014. And it is very important that you try to get as close to a date as possible. If you cannot get the exact date, the month typically is okay. However, on an application process, exact dates typically are preferred. So bear that in mind. And now we'll go into a little, did you know, a little bit of learning. So 88% of job rejections occur if you have a photo, a picture, a logo, anything like that on your resume. I know about 20 years ago, it was the hottest thing to have a photo on your resume, but those days are gone to the dinosaur. So make sure you have eliminated those and purged them from your resume. 68% of employers will look for you and find you on Facebook. So make sure that your profile is okay and does the best possible representation of yourself. And my favorite stat here, so 87% of recruiters utilize LinkedIn. So if you do not have a LinkedIn right now, you are really shooting yourself in the foot. I encourage everybody to build a LinkedIn and encourage your friends, family, coworkers to use LinkedIn, especially if you can talk to them and you have an open relationship in which they can endorse skills. So all the skills that you list on your resumes are typically on Indeed or on LinkedIn, and you can have them be endorsed by coworkers, managers, anybody you feel open to have the conversation with, and like, hey, I believe I'm good at this skill. Would you mind endorsing me for this on LinkedIn? Recruiters see that and they immediately are reaffirmed by what they see on your resume. So being able to have this kind of tie gap in there to really connect everything is quintessential, as well as there's a lot of jobs advertised on LinkedIn, and a lot of recruiters search for passive candidates. So say you're working in a job that you currently like, but you're open to new experiences, having LinkedIn and being connected to different recruiters will indefinitely help you, because they will reach out to you from time to time like, hey, I have an opportunity at XYZ. Would you be interested in learning more? So certainly bolster up your LinkedIn. Do some Google research about what a perfect LinkedIn profile looks like. LinkedIn even has tools within it to tell you how strong your profile is. So definitely do that. 41% of employers might not interview a candidate if they can't find you online. This ties right back into having a LinkedIn. So if they can't find you, a lot of the times it's hard to define the purpose of why you wouldn't have this presence when everybody on the internet is building this presence on a daily basis. So be sure you're online, be sure you're accessible. 50% of employers use social media to screen candidates for professional persona. Pretty common, so make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, your best professional persona forward, and just really be the best you can. So 76% of emails or resumes are ignored if they have inappropriate emails. Having worked as a recruiter, I have certainly seen my fair share of bizarre emails, and I will tell you, it certainly does eliminate you from the process a lot of the time, because when you're applying for a professional position and they see that, it really shows a mark of unprofessionalism. So let's get into some of the parts of the resume. So parts of a resume usually start with a heading, which we saw in our previous examples, a career summary, a highlight or skills summary, work experience, education, and then your volunteer experience. So what does a heading consist of, guys? It consists of your full name, first name and last name, as it should, an address, phone number, email address, and if you want, a LinkedIn URL. But given my previous spiel 30 seconds ago, I believe you definitely should have that LinkedIn URL on there. It is easy for LinkedIn recruiters to check it out and identify it. So make sure you do that. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at a heading format here. So we'll start with this one. Can anybody tell me what they believe is wrong with this heading format? Feel free to answer in the chat or via voice. Seeing some great answers, some lowercase name, punctuation is incorrect, unprofessional email, Lakers in 6, 2020. So yes, all those things are correct. And I did notice a question in here from Miles. So if most employees, and this directly relates into this, so I will take it now. If most employers prefer reverse chronological resumes, are there situations where combination resume would be more practical? Yes, Miles. So if you are re-entering the workforce and you have maybe made a significant career change, you've gone from working entirely industrial positions your entire life to now doing something in the professional sector, maybe admin or anything like that, utilizing a combination resume to really highlight the skills that you learned in those previous industries and how they're transferable, work very good on a combination resume, and you should consider doing so. And thank you everybody for your answers on this first heading format. You are all 100% correct. Names not capitalized, the address and phone are in the wrong format, and it's definitely got an inappropriate email address. So here is an example of what it should look like. So we have everything properly capitalized, the names and everything are in the correct format, and we have an appropriate email address. So just be sure that you're doing that. Typically, Gmail is a pretty standard email to use for your professional email address. Just be sure to write down those passwords, because if you're like me, you'll probably forget it and then you'll have to make a million new ones. So applicant tracking systems. Is anybody familiar with an applicant tracking system? So we see a couple people are pretty familiar with them. That's good. If you know what an ATS is, an applicant tracking system, you're certainly ahead of the curve. So good for you for having that knowledge. So ATS software, what it is an applicant tracking system that then takes in all the resumes, it scans them, searches them for keywords, and then it weeds people out dependent upon that. And as you can see here, about 50 to 75% of applications are ruled out before they even make their way to the recruiter, which really speaks to being able to use those keywords properly and being able to use action verbs to identify what position you did, what your job duties were, and everything like that. So really make sure that that is on point before you start applying to organizations with ATSs. And I will say the vast majority of them do use it. And another upside to an ATS that you might not consider is that once you have applied and your resume has been accepted into an applicant tracking system, you are in their system. So if any opportunity comes up, your resume is already existing in their system, and a lot of organizations do searches within their current resume pool to see if there's somebody that they already have already basically done a clear check of to see if they can reach out to. So be sure to do that. Here we just get into some more tips on the ATS. So customize your resume for each job you apply to. And I would like to put a little caveat on that. It is certainly important to do so. However, when you are doing so, make sure you are only changing them drastically if it is an entirely different or unique position. If you're applying for a shipping and receiving job at a couple different places, you don't have to change them too drastically. Maybe just change your career summary a little bit to be more specific to the specific organization. Make sure you remove all images, graphics, logos, pictures, anything on there. Use the typical resume sections that we have been discussing. They will certainly be in the applicant tracking system, and if you have some random section built in there, it might just immediately eliminate you. Check your spelling, check your grammar, of course. And then I know this seems a little bit silly. However, a lot of applicant tracking systems do check font and font size. So be sure to try to use 11 when possible. And then the 3 different types of font that they recommend are Vidania, Tahoma, and Calibri. So I know it's a small thing and it's an easy thing to do. Just consider doing so when you are applying to organizations that have applicant tracking systems. I'm hearing in the chat that everybody also can use Arial 10. Definitely very true. Those are just the 3 that we use within our ATS. So just take that into consideration. There are lots of different fonts that work. Just make sure it is professional looking and is clear and concise. So a career summary is a small paragraph highlighting experience. Really, you should avoid using the first person. And when I say using first person, I mean, I did this at so-and-so, I did this. Avoid using that. Use more of a kind of a broad stroke to describe what you did. The length should be about 2 to 4 sentences. However, as you progress through your career, this will be a little bit more challenging to achieve as you will have achieved more things. So once you get to that point, consider making it a little bit longer or just downsizing to really hit the biggest highlights of your careers. And that can be a challenge. So if you ever need help, again, feel free to reach out to the Workforce Connection Centers. We're very well versed in doing so. And you're going to customize every resume in this section if you're applying for unique positions. So if you're changing a position entirely, certainly change this career summary to be more suited to the position you're applying for. And just a word of caution, avoid being overly general. If you're saying something that a million other people are saying, it kind of devalues what you're saying, and try not to be too self-serving. You certainly want to be building yourself up and be providing a adequate representation of yourself and a confident representation of yourself. However, there is limits to what is acceptable. So be sure just to be honest and true with yourself and not too self-serving. So here we're going to see a couple examples. These are quite long and I will not go into every single one of them. However, I will break down some parts of these that I do feel are quite strong and should be utilized, and use these words in your resumes as you take them forward. So in this first one, we have enthusiastic and diligent retail sales associate with an excellent sales and customer service track record. So in this one sentence, they've not only described their demeanor, they've described how they work. They're very diligent. They won't be shaken off easily by some bump in the road or some customer being rude, as well as they have an excellent sales and customer service track record. So in this one sentence, they've highlighted basically their character as well as their ability. So that is something that you should aim to do. And we will have a resource guide available for you guys to kind of look at some of this stuff and be able to better understand it. And then in this next one here, we have a sentence that I really like, which is proven clerical customer service communication skills in a variety of settings. And I like this one because they use the word proven. When you say words like that, it means that you have been tested and you have understanding of everything you need to know in that area. And I certainly would not recommend using them if you are not. So words like proven, adept, proficient, things along those lines are definitely very beneficial. However, be sure that you actually are those things before using them, because if you use them, you will certainly be asked to talk about it in the interview. And you'll need to be able to articulate what you did that made you proficient and possibly be tested on it. I know for a lot of organizations that have requirements for Microsoft Word, Excel, and things like that, there are online virtual tools for them to test to make sure you are doing exactly what you are saying you were doing. And then in this last one, it kind of highlights again what we just said: adapted strategy, coordination, and follow through for all stages, ensuring successful participation for all attendees. Again, if you're using those words, make sure you are that. So now we'll go a little bit into the careers and skill summary here. Bullet point examples. Sorry, I'm just taking one look at the chat here. We will answer that question at the end, Miles, as we're continuing to move forward. Consider your strengths and what will set you apart from other candidates. This one is definitely a bit of a challenge for most people who are either starting out with their resume building or just trying to change career paths. However, there are always some good positive ones you can utilize. So for example, a positive attitude and a strong work ethic, excellent time management skills, enthusiastic team player and able to work well independently, effective and verbal and written communication skills. And once again, all of these can be found on LinkedIn endorsed skills. So if you have a LinkedIn and you get people to endorse you and you put it on your resume and your recruiter sees that you're endorsed for it on LinkedIn, your chances are much higher than the next guy who's applying for the same position. But really take some time to think about what separates you in your career and skill summary, things that really, really, really stand out. Just got another chat question. My dad got a job once because he printed his resume out on green paper and it stood out from the crowd. I would think that would get your resume set aside. Thoughts on this? Yes. So maybe back in the day that would have been something acceptable. And most of the time nowadays, your resume isn't going to be on paper. Most of the time your resume is going to be submitted electronically, especially if you are doing it via Indeed, Career Builder, Milwaukee Jobs, or online job applications. So a lot of the ATSs currently will probably look at that green paper and just kind of eliminate it. So we're going to try to make your resume stand out from the crowd with its clear, concise message rather than something a little more gimmicky. Because at the end of the day, if you can convey professionalism in that, it will make you stand out more than a green piece of paper. So work experience here. So work experience is the largest part of your resume. It gives employers a clear picture of your abilities, and the use of action verbs and keywords to write accomplishment statements are really important. Does anybody have an example of an accomplishment statement that they can think of, or an action verb? Oh, I do see another question in the chat. Shannon says, that's creative. What if it was a creative and arts profession? Would that work? That is a case of where you have to think about the specific industry that you're applying for. If you are applying to be an art director in an organization or anything that is built upon art, maybe consider doing something like that. However, there is always the chance it could backfire. So it's a gamble. If you're willing to take that gamble, I would recommend go for it. However, there is a proven record with professional resumes getting noticed and people getting hired from them. Ooh, Ken B has a good one here, and so does Nafisa. Reduce production time by 2 hours for moderate-sized widgets. That is awesome. Increase sales by 34% in 1 year. Facilitate, monitor, delegate some action words. You guys are on point today. So yes, more examples, sorted and labeled. Anytime you can use these types of verbs to really describe or to really put into action what you have done, it is going to be beneficial for you. So the next thing we're going to get to is the education piece. Much like a reverse chronological resume, this would apply for every single type of resume, combination and reverse. You're going to want to list your highest education completed first. And the dates you will list should typically be within the last 10 years. That being said, if you did graduate 10 years plus ago from whatever it may be, GED, high school, college, I do feel still is quite important to list that, even if it was pretty far in the past. And be sure to put when your coursework is in progress. It helps employers to identify when you will be available full-time, what you are trying to accomplish as far as schooling, and where you will best fit into organizations based upon the knowledge gained in there. So be sure to include when you're currently working towards a goal, because not only does it show that you are purposely trying to grow in an area, it shows that you have the initiative to follow through on things. Training and certificates. So you typically are going to want to put all trainings and certificates that you have earned on your resume if they are applicable to the job you are applying for. So say you're applying to work in food service, but you have a CNA certification. Doesn't really make sense to put that on your resume unless you have some type of first aid built within that food service. Include specific trainings related to the position, as I just stated, and list any additional coursework you've taken on. So for example, there's a lot of different online courses in professionalism, in job coaching, in a lot of different fields that you could apply for and utilize that to not only have individual growth, but growth within your organization. And then any professional certificates you earn on the job. I know a lot of people get their forklift certification via their employer, and it is a great opportunity to move forward in the shipping and receiving world. So definitely include those. This takes us to our volunteer experience. Volunteer experience is especially useful if you don't have that much job experience. It really uses a lot of transferable skills and being able to speak to them rather than having done it in a job. So it's nice to use. It's formatted very similar to your work history, essentially exactly the same as you would format it. And you're going to want to do everything you would do in this category similar to the work experience because you want it to seem as transferable as possible. So you're going to want to highlight your accomplishments. You're going to want to use your action verbs, your keywords, everything you can in there. Question from Julie: how would you list a college that you attended but did not graduate from? You would list the current coursework that you have done. So you would put your highest level achieved, essentially. So if you had gotten to the point where you were a junior but did not graduate, you would essentially put that you had X amount of credits up to this point into your junior year, and you would hopefully want to finish that. But if you did not want to finish it, it just wasn't for you, you would just end it there and just be able to speak towards it in an interview. Another question for Miles. Typically we hear that resume should be 1 page, but what if you have lots of relevant volunteer and work experience, education, certificates, and more? What do you keep on your resume and what do you leave off? That is a very good question, Miles. So typically, you are correct. We do want to try to keep it to 1, maybe 1.5 pages. So you want to look at all that experience you have. If you have a kind of a broader experience base, you're going to want to narrow that down based upon the specifics of the job. And historically speaking, if you have a lot of work experience as well as a lot of volunteer experience, that volunteer experience is really overshadowed by the work experience anyways. So consider excluding that to kind of trim it down, unless there is something that is a very, very relatable transferable skill on there, in which case try to limit it down to just maybe 1 volunteer experience and let the job duties and your achievements speak for themselves in that matter. Julie has another question. If you have multiple schools that happened before you graduated, would you omit them? That is a tough question. I personally believe that you would omit them and just put the most recent, just because it shows that you're at this current place in your career and your education and everything has taken you there. And if the question is asked, just be able to answer honestly and discuss it. So next we're going to get into our cover letter. So a lot of us aren't using cover letters, myself included, but we feel you definitely need the information because it's safe to say everybody here is going to continue to grow and progress in their career, and it may take them to the point where a cover letter is a necessity. So a cover letter is an introduction to who you are, your interest in a position, your qualifications, and why you are the best candidate. It's essentially very similar to kind of a skill summary, career summary, except for its own individual page, and it is specifically tailored to one organization for one position. These are definitely going to be edited every single time you apply for a different job, no matter if it's the same job at a different organization. They need to be tailored to fit specifically to the organization you're working for. And you only submit it if requested. And again, they typically aren't requested until you get to a certain level in your career, but it is best to have the knowledge for when you get there. References. How many people have their references ready to go? Yay or nay in the chat. How many people have references that they know they can use? I'm seeing some good yays here. And of those yays, how many people can confidently say that their reference knows they're using them as a reference? Awesome. You guys are way ahead of the curve. That's exactly what you want to look for. So when you use your references, you want to list them on a separate piece of paper, not included on a resume. Sometimes you can put on a resume, you can put references upon requests or something along those lines, just to show initiative that you have current references. However, in the application process, they typically are going to ask for your references then and there. So having them predetermined and having them know that you're going to use them as a reference is quintessential for the application process. So just bear that in mind. So appropriate people to use, and once again, ask permission first, professional coworkers, supervisors, teachers, different community members. Really try to avoid using family or relatives, as sometimes they can be a little bit biased, as we all know. So really try to stick towards the professional work environment type people, people that you have kind of worked on as a team or have reported up to. And then make sure you verify all addresses, phone numbers, email, everything with them, because a lot of the times not having the ability to get in contact with a reference will kick you out of the process. Even if you were the front runner, if they're unable to get references and the client or employer requires references, unfortunately, you'll not be able to continue. So what happens next? So resume development. If you need assistance at anything, creating an electronic resume, or you want to learn more about interview skills, which is the next coming up event, you can follow up with us, and we would definitely be engaging and interested in arranging that for you guys. And this is just kind of some of the information. If you ever need to get in touch with somebody in the Workforce Connection Centers, you can reach out to Annette Dezinio, or if you have more interest in Goodwill Talent Bridge, you can certainly reach out to me and I can hook you up with everything that we're currently recruiting for to apply for positions directly.
That's something.
So our next step here is we're going to do some, I believe, just some group discussion. We're going to discuss keywords, buzzwords, achievements versus accomplishments, and discuss how to address gaps in employment.
Absolutely. So during this time, for those that are still here, we originally decided to do some breakout rooms. However, due to the number of individuals that are in the room at the moment, we'll stay in the current larger room that we're in. So we won't break out at all, but we'll have some discussion around questions that you might have. So this is where you can come off your camera, you can get involved in the chat, or you can also open up your microphone. And we want to have some facilitated discussion with you around some buzzwords or keywords that you currently are thinking about, or questions that you might have around transferable skills. And we've got some professionals on the call here that can help with some of those questions that you might have, or that can also share some insight regarding what type of buzzwords or keywords you could potentially use. So if we have participants on the call and any professionals that's on the call, if you want to chime in or jump in, this is definitely that moment. And we'll start with the first topic, which is that buzzwords, keywords, transferable skills, and talk through that.
I'll jump in, and there are lists for everything. Of course, we can go to Google and get anything, but there is a reference guide for this workshop through the Workforce Connection Center, and one of the things that's included in there is a list of transferable skills. And what I like about this particular list is it divides them up by some categories. For instance, leadership, working with people, dealing with data, because some positions are much more analytical and you would want to be using those type of words that maybe shift from, think of transferable skills as sort of luggage. You just take it from one job to the next. You already possess it, but it's a skill that you can utilize in your new role. So I think anytime you can refer to one of these lists, action verbs, transferable skills, keywords, it just makes it a little bit quicker to refer to something rather than trying to scramble and think of these words on your own. These lists, I use them all the time. I think they're awesome.
Agree to agree completely.
Another thing to kind of piggyback off what Anthony has already gone over, I think it's really helpful for candidates to slightly tailor their resumes a little bit depending on what job you're applying for. And that's kind of where key and buzzwords can come in. If you're looking at a job description and there's a certain program they use, if it's like a software position, or, even in the manufacturing world, if there's, you've used a forklift or something like that, try to make sure that you are changing the verbiage on your resume to include those things, so that, a lot of times recruiters are sourcing for these positions, meaning they're going on Indeed or Career Builder, whatever it is, and doing searches to try to find resumes that fit the position that they're filling. So that way, if you have these buzzwords in your resume, when these searches are done, then your resume is going to come up over someone who may have the skills needed for that job, but they don't have the words that are necessary to match what that recruiter is looking for. And again, to kind of piggyback off what Anthony also said about the fact that recruiters only take 5 to 7 seconds to look at a resume. If you have those keywords in your resume, if a recruiter is scanning through it and they're only looking at it for a few seconds, if they see that you have words in your resume that are needed for that job, they may take additional time to be looking at your resume, and then you may get the follow-up call that you would be looking for.
Those are really good tips, ladies. Thank you so much, Annette and Leah. Any additional tips at all that you'd like to give around keywords or buzzwords, anyone that's on the call? And any questions from our participants?
Yeah, the chat line is open, so if you have any questions at all regarding these, feel free to ring on in.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing about action verbs, because I think that they're the best thing you can do when it comes to your resume. And because they are descriptive and indicate an accomplishment, because what you want to think about with your resume is what can you do for the employer. So it's sort of about them, it's about you, but it's, so you have to demonstrate what you can do for them. And the way you do that is by using an action verb, which then makes that bullet point much more clear. Anthony pointed that out on the example and that combination, or excuse me, the chronological resume. So it just serves you so well to take a little bit of time to use those words, and then you're really fully demonstrating that you can accomplish things versus what was the task. We don't want to know what the job description was. We want to know, what did you accomplish?
And speaking of accomplish, Annette, that's a really good segue. You want to really highlight your achievements and your accomplishments. And Anthony mentioned this a little bit earlier on. Anything that you can do to show that you've achieved or you've developed or that you've accomplished something, you really want to not necessarily put the exact job description of what you did, but you actually want to list some things that you've achieved or you have accomplished, or those action verbs that can really call out your resume. So I think that was a really good segue. I don't know if there's any other volunteers that we had that wanted to highlight accomplishments or achievements in this section, but feel free to jump in and say anything additional that you like.
One thing to kind of talk about that too is, I feel like a lot of times, and Anthony kind of said this too, but candidates are overlooking the accomplishments in their resumes because they're focused more on the duties that they had. So I think it's important to show an employer the lasting effects that you've had on each, place that you've worked, so that a company who's looking to hire you knows that you take initiative and do things to go above and beyond. And then they'll understand what you can do for the company once they hire you. And not forgetting about that part of your resume versus putting more, like you said, about just the job description.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then maybe not including, some people I think make an accomplishment section. It can get a little long, and they may include things from like high school, and maybe you've been in the workforce for 20 years. I would just make sure to keep it, shorter if you do choose to make a whole section about this, and maybe don't include the things that might be a little outdated, like Anthony said.
I totally agree. I think Anthony had a lot of great suggestions. So if we get time, I definitely would agree to go in and review and re-listen to the sessions that we had here with Anthony today. And thank you so much, Annette and Leah, for your additional feedback. It's super helpful. I saw that Ken did list a personal experience. Ken, did you want to come up and talk about that, or do you want us to continue? We want to provide you with time if you feel it's relevant right now. Okay. One of our professionals can definitely follow up with you and talk with you one-on-one if you'd like. Perfect. Wonderful. You're just sharing. And it's definitely good to know that. Annette, I see that you were in the mix of, were you going to say something?
Well, I think we were going to talk a little bit about the resources for anyone who attended. So the resource guide that goes along with this presentation is going to be available in numerous places. It's going to be in the virtual library on the United Way page. It's going to be, an email will come out to those of you who have participated in a survey, so it'll be included there as well. It will be, of course, for anyone who would like to contact the Workforce Connection Center, we can make that available to you as well. And then I think we had the link in the chat. So there's multiple places for you to have more detail on some of the particular things we talked about in the workshop. For instance, the applicant tracking system, there's several more pages in that guide that details some of the best tips to get through an applicant tracking system.
I also like to highlight that Goodwill has offered their 3 workforce locations. So workforce center locations, I apologize. They have one at 153 West Oklahoma Street. They also have 3903 North Richards, as well as 6055 North 91st Street. So you are more than welcome to go and speak with some of the trained professionals that can support you with your resume. They are doing things by appointment. So there are phone numbers and there's also website addresses in the chat that you can go in and grab if you are interested in furthering your resume or sitting with someone to talk through that. I'd like to maybe recommend that if you are looking to address gaps in your employment, also going to Goodwill. We're coming up on the 1 o'clock hour, so I'd like to just put a plug out for our Save the Date of the next event. Earlier in the session, I said it was November the 14th. It's actually November the 17th, so correction on my part. We are hoping to continue to push this out from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. on November the 17th. We will be focusing on how to prepare for an interview. A lot of employers are doing virtual interviews, so we are hoping to highlight ways that you can get yourself ready and prepared for a virtual interview. I'd like to take a quick survey before we exit to see if you felt the information here was beneficial to you. So you'll see a pulse check, a survey come on your screen here. And while you're taking that survey, I'd like to just say that United Way has taken the courtesy of housing all of this information on their site. You can find it at unitedwaygmwc.org/employment-resources. So we are hoping that you go out to that page. You'll find a list of resources for resumes, interviews, financial management, as well as wellness. And you'll also receive a number of other links that are available for job and employment opportunities. So keep in mind that we are actively updating employment opportunities on this site where you can apply and submit your resume directly to those employers. We hope that you've had an amazing time with us today and taken some beneficial information. It seems like it was 100% beneficial to each of you. So thank you for your time. Planning members, if you have anything additional to say, please go ahead. We're a little bit past 1 o'clock, and I like to be respectful of those on the call time as well.
Nafisa, I would think the only thing I would say is we want to thank all of our partners, and definitely a big thank you to Anthony for the presentation. It was a great presentation. And I know that folks in our community will be excited to not only be able to go back and look at this, and please, we have shared this on Facebook. Please share. Any of the folks that you have in your community that this could be a help to, please provide this information to them, because that is why we are here. We are here to help our community, and just excited for this work and look for the next event.
Thank you. Thanks all of our volunteers. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Really, you should thank yourselves.
Yeah.
You're doing
Thank
something
you.
positive for yourself.